Hello, Hussein. Hello, Vinod. Thank you very much for joining today on the discussion. My name is Prachi. I'm the Mumbai chapter editor for Citizen Matters website. We look at civic issues and we try to take a deep dive into various issues that are related to citizens in from urban context. So we are basically focused on cities. So this, of course, Dharavi Redevelopment Project is probably one of the biggest urban planning slash policy slash human rights project that is unfolding in modern India. Since the time Gautam Adani's involvement in the project has been announced, there has been severe backlash from the people of Dharavi more than anyone else. So, why is it happening? What is really the concern of people here? And what are their biggest apprehensions since the project has been announced?
Ever since Adani has got involved in this project, the I would say the opposition has taken up this issue of Adani being the wrong kind of private developer for a project of this size. You see, the involvement of Adani in this project also has come with a checkered history, and his entire backdoor entry into the redevelopment and the project. Fear then amongst the people was that Adani is, if he fails, and after breaking the entire slum or when people are dishoused, it would give rise to a large scale misery, and there would be no way of anybody taking him on because he was so close to the government. So people's fears were mainly of handing over this large ski, as you said, one of the largest redevelopment projects to a private party, and they would have been much happier if some government agencies, which included MADA or SRA or the BMC, had taken up this project. So I would say Gautam Adani, the red flagging of Gautam Adani happened when the Hindenburg report was out. There were his role in in kind of trading and bringing in money through very doubtful sources. So there was a lot of controversy about Adani and his rise to riches, becoming the richest man, one of the richest men in the world, and also coinciding with the rise of uh, the present prime minister. So all this raised red flags against Gautam Adani being forced on the people of Dharavi. And this is something which the state government led by BJP and the center were both forcing the people of Dharavi to accept Gautam Adani as the only alternative. I think this started the protests, and which snowballed into a huge kind of people's movement, and which has also shown its results by two members of parliament, that is, I would say, Anil Desai from the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena, as well as Varsha Gaikwad, both of them who fought the elections actually on against Adani being given the redevelopment project, both winning. And this also proves that the people's mandate was with this popular opposition to Adani.
So this is not the first time Dharavi redevelopment has been planned, right? So, and previously also it did not go through. So if we juxtapose the promises that have come from the project proposal and what Dharavi actually is, how do you kind of look at these two situations?
First of all, any slum redevelopment project, not just Dharavi for that matter, is incredibly complex. Even small projects. Getting together a group of 50, 60 households to agree on a particular proposal, getting consent, and then carrying out the project, which is again, since it is a public-private partnership, I mean, built by private developers. there is going to be a lot of uncertainty about whether those projects happen or not. And you can see that there are lots of SRA projects which are actually stalled. And these are also small projects, so not very large projects. When you talk about Dharavi as a whole, um, the complexities become even larger. Um, to give a sense of this, Dharavi is not a small, it's not a cluster. It's not a, a slum which is or uh, a small settlement. It is actually a entire revenue village. You know, and it is very large. The planning area is 240 hectares, um, and it has also been something that has been uh, there have been various attempts to redevelop Dharavi. The earliest goes back all the way to the when the Bombay, Improvement Trust was building the Dadar Parsi colony in Hindu colony. At that time, it was thought that Dharavi was an undesirable uh, kind of settlement in a lavish middle class residential suburb. So there was an attempt to evict people from Dharavi, and that was resisted, and that never happened. And then later in '85, there was the Prime Minister's grant project, Rajiv Gandhi, and about 35 hectares, 37 hectares, I think, were allocated to Dharavi. Earlier, the plan was obviously 100 crores, but then it was bifurcated, and only about 35 crores came to Dharavi. And a few projects were done under the Pradhan Mantri grants project, and a master plan was also made, but that was resisted as well. You know, um, Later on, American educated architect Mukesh Mehta came up with this grand scheme of making a township, very similar to the way in which probably it is being envisioned now. And that immediately evoked a lot of criticism.
I remember that. It became a
Yeah,
huge thing at that
was
time.
a huge thing.
Yeah.
In 2004-5, the SRA declared Dharavi as a special planning area, and a master plan was made. There were 9 sectors, and it was also thought that there would be different. Each of those sectors would be dealt with separately, and then the sectors were reduced to 5, and there was all of that. But that plan was resisted quite a lot, and through a lot of negotiation, there was certain kind of alternatives thought about, proposed. I mean, a lot of urbanists and architects suggested that instead of having a large master plan to redevelop Dharavi. Dharavi has many different communities, and these could be developed as smaller projects. It should also be noted that Dharavi already has had many projects within the SRA, through the SRA. A lot of single building kind of projects, which are financed through PDR, and about 60 to 65, if I'm not getting the numbers wrong. It is not true that Dharavi is almost entirely a squatter settlement. There have been different projects, different kinds of projects that have been built over time, and being such a diverse settlement, um, you know, it is very difficult to envision, to envision, or uh, even to envision, but to carry out such a large project, and that is going to be, you know, uh, which makes it so complicated. So even if it is, whether it is Adani or any other builder, the the issue really is, can one developer firm, which is actually now under the new the tender and the way in which the authority has been formed, it gives the developer almost state-like powers to carry out this project. Um, so this is going to be a problem. So any single builder redeveloping all of Dharavi is going to be a very, very complicated affair. And given Adani's background, his history, and the kind of exceptions and exemptions and inducements that have been given to him, it is it is even more it is of even greater concern. So ideally, Dharavi, almost everybody who lives in Dharavi does want um, a better living environment,
Right.
um, and development is what people want in Dharavi. And the question is, how should it happen? And like Vinod said, there are ways of doing it, and it should be a publicly financed public sector project entirely through one of the government authorities, so that there is accountability, so that there is room for negotiations, so that there is the aspirations and the wishes of people are taken into consideration, and rather than through a developer firm which is essentially unaccountable to the
Yeah.
residents and to the citizens of the city.
What do people of Dharavi really need and want? Like, I'd like both of you to answer this question. Like, and how will it fit in the city planning and urban planning, which is sustainable and equitable in the larger run?
I'm saying people
Yeah.
want redevelopment, and they are tired of living in the kind of spaces that they are staying in right now. So
Right.
the entire population of Dharavi is looking forward for some kind of redevelopment. Okay, so how it comes to them through the government, through Adani, or through XYZ settling, the people really want redevelopment. The point is that they need to be consulted, and right now they are not in a position. They have been pushed so much into a corner, and their entire life uh, has been, so dehumanified that they are not even asked about their own space, about their own house. They're considered to be squatters, and this redevelopment is also seen as a largesse, where they have no rights, they have no claims, they have no title to the land itself. And so the people of Dharavi, except probably a small percentage who are able to voice their concerns, uh, most of them would be happy to get any kind of accommodation. So, what do people want? Like, say, I can speak for our members who are, we have members, we have about more than 1,000 members, women who are working women. They're very clear that they just want some space which is pakka, which belongs to them, and they can bring up their children there. They want running water. They want they don't want to be harassed by various agencies. They don't want rainwater to come in, and they want their children mainly to have access to schools. And all this is possible only if they get access to their livelihoods, which is nearby. So, taking away their livelihoods or not talking about the education of their children or the health services in Sion Hospital, all this is a package. And today, the people of Dharavi are in uh, in getting these services through a lot of difficulty. So the average person in Dharavi is looking forward to any kind of housing project wherein their slums will be converted to, pakka structures. But at the same time, they are also worried that they need to be close to their workspace, and throwing them 10 kilometers away or 15 kilometers away does not solve the issues, because uh, they will have all these problems of, access to education, access to jobs. So I think uh, the need for redevelopment of housing in Mumbai is huge, and people living in slums are living in such difficult conditions, especially now in the monsoon when houses are leaking, or even during the pandemic. People's lives were miserable, and most of them a lot are being migrants, they face a lot of difficulty because to every one structure which is pakka, there are at least two structures where people are living on rent. And when you talk of migrant workers, we are talking of those who are living on in rent in the slums, and they need security. They need to be told where they will be living in the future, where their children's schools are. So this has to be a people centric consultation, and people will have to be taken into confidence before you start breaking their houses.
Yeah. So the thing about this, uh, the, I mean, we should look a little bit at the way in which as the news as news reports have suggested that only people who are eligible under the SRA
Yes.
Act will be given houses in Dharavi.
Yeah.
The remaining people who cannot show that they have been living prior to the year 2000 will be relocated to other sites. And already a lot of land has been, like the largest that Vinod mentioned, has been given to Adani to relocate people who are not eligible. Now, how's eligibility decided? The way it works is that people who live on the ground story and can show that they were on electoral records before the year 2000, they are considered eligible. And a lot of people live on rent. A lot of people who live on the ground story build one or two stories and rent those stories, those
And it's
units.
for years. I think they live on
Yeah,
rent, not
yeah.
for a short time. They're
Not,
there for
not
several
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Dharavi is a very settled community. It is not a, people don't come and go.
No, no, that's
In,
true.
the thing about your question, which is that what do people want? It's very, for the same reasons that redevelopment is complicated, it is also difficult to determine, what people want. It is a very large settlement with many different groups of people. And there has been no effort to really understand this. The only surveys that the government has done are these entitlement surveys, eligibility surveys. Who is living on the ground story and whether they have documents.
Not a consultation about what they need or
These are not socioeconomic surveys
not
or
a social.
attitude, opinion polls or anything of that kind. Um, I mean, um, the surveys don't even include the way the livelihoods, the occupations. All of that is the only way we know is through the work of journalists, through the work of researchers, through the work of activists. Beyond that, Dharavi is a mystery to everyone. You know. So what do people of Dharavi want? Well, some people who have taken the effort of trying to find out um, say that, well, a large number of people in Dharavi are very satisfied mainly with the location that they occupy in the city, and they also think that their lives are better than they were 10 years ago. um, what they do not like is that these are this is a settlement which has very poor municipal services, water, sanitation, um, and all of those things are actually um, due to municipal neglect. You must also be remember that 70 to 75% of land in Dharavi is BMC land,
Yeah.
and now a very large portion is central government land. So it is public land. It is not private land. So the cost of land acquisition doesn't exist. So if the municipal corporation had at some point in the past even provided basic services to Dharavi, um, many of these inadequacies would have been addressed much earlier. Um, so, if we are to say that people in Dharavi want redevelopment, it ought to be a project and a program. It cannot simply be a real estate development plan. What Dharavi actually needs is an economic development plan, which means that there has to be a very careful survey of jobs, livelihoods, occupations, um, conditions in which people live, the inadequacies, and each of those have to be addressed in different ways, not through a large mega project like the way it is being envisioned now.
I think if we say that everybody who is employed in the informal economy of Dharavi should be given a government job, that will be the end of it, right? I mean,
No, and what is also interesting, Prachi, is that
yeah.
people in Dharavi have never depended on the government. They still
Exactly,
have,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we
even
were
even
to
for
make the government accountable for the employment aspect of it, it would look a very different. It would assume a very different proportion altogether, right? Yeah.
until such time when this dialogue, this we are talking about redevelopment. Before this, people were in awe of Dharavi simply because it was a township of informal workers. It was like a workers' colony.
Correct.
And the
Correct.
kind of work that people were doing, working 12 hours and, making a living and finding value in, building livelihoods on recycling, on the most kind of jobs which nobody else wanted to. And this was completely run by migrant workers who had no kind of safety net. They had no provision for provident fund, no gratuity, no occupational safety. And despite all this, they prospered. And you would say that the people in Dharavi are prosperous in the way that most Indians do when there is no government support. So if the people of Dharavi at present are working, and what this plan is also doing is disrupting that entire livelihood aspect, the livelihoods of all these people, and throwing them out into the open. The need for planning is also so that people understand that what their future looks like, how they're going to plan their jobs, and what where the schools are going to be. So this kind of information is more like a human right. It's a democratic right of citizens and people in this country to know what the future is going to look like.
Yes.
It can't be a future which is, left into the hands of a private developer, because in simple terms, this project is going to take 17 years to complete. Okay. Now you give the entire project to a private developer, and you trust him that for the next 17 years he is going to be running this project. And we have so many instances in the last 10 years of builders having been liquidated, having gone to jail. And on the other hand, you have Ramabai Nagar, which is being developed by the SRA. So I'm saying, when the government own organizations are developing Ramabai, and they're doing the survey also, and they've
Mm.
completed it, why they couldn't do the survey for Dharavi themselves? Why do they rely on Adani, who is a vested interest in creating extra TDR for himself? Because this whole sale of TDR is going to be one of the biggest scams, because you're going to create so much TDR, and every builder has to buy 40% of their TDR from the Dharavi project. So these are all questions which are very valid, which people are raising, and the opposition parties which are being blamed for it are only articulating it.
Mm.
And the next election is going to be fought on these issues.
Right. When we talked about the Prime Minister's grants that have projects that have been implemented in the past, um, what is the possibility of executing such projects in Dharavi today and making the existing situation much better with far lesser investment in terms of money? What do you think about that? Like, what could, like you mentioned that it can't be one thing, it should be like multiple programs and multiple projects which are smaller. But for example, if we say that just sanitation, just drinking water, just access to better roads, could these be achieved more effectively if someone were to put their minds to it?
No, so as I said, many of these things should have been done earlier.
Yeah.
Um, the the issue, and this is where, again, I mean, from the outside, the densities of Dharavi are such that it would be very difficult to do a basic services program. you know there would have to be, if you want to do planned provision of basic infrastructure, amenities, etc., there would have to be a, redevelopment of some kind. The thing is, it it obviously, to do it at a full Dharavi scale is a huge operation, and only a state can have the kind of, a public sector organization can have the resources to do something like that. Now, the issue is, why, Vinod mentioned that Ramabai Nagar is being done by SRA, whereas Adani's Dharavi is being done by Adani. So why is that? Why is that happening? And everybody knows this, but the numbers, when they are mentioned, it becomes even more shocking.
Scary,
So,
yeah.
um,
Hmm.
for so for instance, one thing that the government announced is that everybody will get a house in Dharavi, including people after the year 2000 and 2012, which is great, which is what we must do. The thing about that is that each of these redevelopments and each unit that is, each household that is rehabilitated is directly linked to the incentives that the developer is going to get.
Right.
So, the more area of rehabilitation the developer creates, the more area he gets as either saleable area or as TDR. And the addition of all of these other plots in the city are also for that reason, because the larger the land area, the larger the built up area, and therefore the larger the incentives linked to those rehabilitation units. So for the developer, this is, probably the only project he would ever want to do. It is so huge.
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it'll probably be done forever, right? After this, like,
the concern for a citizen.
is it?
I mean, I don't live in Dharavi.
Mm,
You don't live in Dharavi. Vinod
mm,
doesn't live in Dharavi. We are citizens of the city. And even we have, some people would scoff at the various protests in different places where local residents are saying, we don't want Dharavi residents to be rehabilitated here. Well, the question is, how much land does Adani need for this project? Um, it is possible to, already people live in Dharavi, all of the people who live in Dharavi, and with maybe 2.5 FSI, the entire settlement can be rehabilitated on site. Maybe you will need a few additional parcels here and there, but it is very possible to do the scheme entirely within Dharavi for eligible and ineligible residents. And it can all be done in, 7.5 to 10,000 crores, which is very, very possible for any development authority in Mumbai. The
actually
reason
do not
why,
even need a private
I mean,
entity.
if you don't need a private developer in Ramabai Nagar, you don't need a private developer in this. The difference is, in Ramabai Nagar, developers will probably not see the kind of profits that they see in Dharavi redevelopment. And so, therefore, the government intervenes there, but here hands it over, all of it, to Dharavi. I mean, uh, from the city's perspective, we should also be asking that why is not only the public land in Dharavi, which should go to the residents of Dharavi, but why is the other public lands all around the city being handed over to the developer?
So that is a complete huge question which citizens of Mumbai and now the Mumbai Bachao Andolan asking,
Mm.
that how do you need 1,200 acres that you started off with a notified area of 2.5 square kilometers? Now you are asking for 1,250 acres. and you've also received 45 acres from the railways, which otherwise never sells their land. And with all this land, a question arises what the opposition parties are, the Dharavi Bachao Andolan Samiti is raising, is that maybe it's not about Dharavi only. This whole thing is about grabbing all this land in Kurla, Mulund, and these kind of Dharavi projects which they want to start. That can be started by the government for all the residents of all the slums. You see, and trying to promise all this seems to be again largesse being offered to Adani so that his project becomes successful. So it is not for the people of Mumbai, but to enable a private developer to somehow, by any means, make this project a success. So in that terms, any builder or any developer, or you give it to a government agency, all these facilities, they will make it a successful project.
Finalish thoughts on, do you think this will go through? I mean,
Um,
what's
well, I mean, you see, a lot of people who we've kind of interacted with on this are not very hopeful. Um, there many things can happen over 10, 15 years. um, you know um, uh, Probably nobody is talking about the prospect, the very real prospect, that in 20, 25 years a large part of Mumbai will be uninhabitable due to
climate change? And yeah,
you know so all of this and apart from that, there may be political changes, there may be um, uh, Adani may probably become go bankrupt in some time. Anything can happen. People will resist and they will oppose it, and they will it might meet a similar fate of the earlier proposals to redevelop Dharavi. uh, but there is, I mean, the project is going to be, the worst outcome is not that the project will not happen. The worst outcome actually is that the project will um, happen partially, in a way that will benefit the developer but not the residents. That will be worse than the project not happening at all. What if um, people are a large number of people, households are put into transit camps and
right.
the project stalls?
And
What
stalls.
happens? What
Right.
happens if the developer only develops a part of it which is profitable and the rest he doesn't? What happens if people are displaced and and they don't get
And
any
there is a history of that.
rental
So,
housing
yeah,
or
yeah.
any kind of housing. So, I mean, those are the bigger concerns than whether the project will happen or not. It is the uncertainties which are of greater concern than the success or failure of the project. And I mean,
And also,
the problem is even the success may not be, as beneficial to residents as we think it will be.
and Hussein, I also feel that we need to flag the kind of impact of densities to all these places, like the salt pan land. Building these houses on salt pan land also we reminds us that the whole of Dharavi is actually built on reclaimed land. People over generations have actually filled in the khadi. That was the whole. So I'm saying water today, anywhere you just dig in Dharavi for even a pipe, you're hit with water coming in. So these are all issues which are going to rise as the project takes place. And the size of the project is such that you're going to put so much load in the center of Mumbai, and by creating this large scale displacement of over about 600,000 to 700,000 and push them beyond 10, 15 kilometers, this disruption of livelihoods also, I think, is one of the greatest tragedies of this project. Because already you asked whether this project would see the light of the day. Already the survey is falling. It was supposed to get over by Diwali or October or something, they are not able to go beyond the surveys falling back because people are opposing. And I see in the next few weeks a real law and order situation happening where people are going to oppose. And as promised to Adani, the government will be forced to move the police in to allow the survey, which is going to create a lot of people coming on the streets, and there are going to be chances that political parties are also trying to disrupt the movement against the redevelopment by creating communal riots. After a long time, Dharavi saw some communal tension just a week back. They have announced that in the next few weeks, they're going to use a lot of manpower to enter Dharavi and finish the survey. And this is going to cause a lot of tension. And the other part is that the plans, what people are saying is that without showing us the plans, why are you doing the survey? You have not even shown us what it's going to look like, what the final product is going to look like. And in the areas where they are planning to have this Navi Dharavi, that is Kurla or Mulund, or in the other parts of Mumbai where the 1200 acres are located, the local people there are opposing in Mulund and Kurla. They've had meetings and they're very clear that they don't want the uh, houses which are people who are being displaced from Dharavi, their houses to be built in either Kurla.
Yeah, so just I would like to wrap this up, and I thought the key takeaways I thought from this discussion was that without consulting the public, I don't think any project of redevelopment can even go through, right? So um, that would be the first and foremost thing to be done here, and there's a lot of apprehension about how this entire project would even carry on if it were to get go ahead for 15, 17 years. So yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably have to see what the results of assembly election are. I think for a lot of um, I have a feeling that I mean, it will probably depend on what happens in these assembly elections, and also the people's movement is getting stronger by the day, as we know this thing. So we need to see how that pans out.
It will it will have to be Dharavi's
The
residents
people
themselves
power, yeah,
who
yeah.
will have to change the parameters of this project, um, and um, and all that we can do as citizens of the city is to support them.